welcome to the Word Hole Media presentation of Major League A-Holes. I am Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are in the hole with Major League A-Holes, episode 151. Hopefully we're not recording this multiple times as we did with episode 150. We have a breaking news show. Oh, what are you drinking? Is this a Thursday Monday?
Monday margarita to make you happy again. You said I was so great when I drank a margarita, so I'm trying to bring the magic back.
Yeah, the lost episode of 150 that we never actually recorded. You were hepped up on margaritas. It was a fantastic episode that we'll never hear, but alas, we did re-record it, and I don't think it had that same magic that we had the first time, but what can you do? We do have breaking news tonight, though, about an hour before we just jumped on here. Javier Báez is out for the season. Detroit Tigers shortstop with a right hip injury surgery that he's going to be having next week. So that leads to lots of questions that I have about my Tigers and lots of interesting things going on with the roster right now. So we'll get into that. We've had the MLB schedule makers must listen to the podcast because this past week they put all of our teams together playing each other. It's fucking awesome.
It's very strange.
Your Giants played your White Sox. My Cubs played my Tigers, and my Tigers played your White Sox. Actually, they're playing them still tonight. A rare wraparound 4-game series that goes to Monday evening.
The weird thing I thought, Smitty, was that the same team series, the Tigers at Cubs and the Sox at Giants, were on the same days. Like, it was just such a weird coincidence that our podcast fell into some weird alignment. Then the two teams we talk about the most are both playing against each other. So it's like
the 4 teams. Yeah.
The 4 teams, the two each of us talk about the most. Yeah.
There might be somebody in MLB's front office that listens to the podcast and just thought, hey, so these fuckers a bone, help them out.
Theo
episode 151.
Theo Epstein's been listening since the Starbucks broadcast.
That's right. We're going to revive a segment that kind of fell off after we took our hiatus this spring. I'm going to bring back Badass of the Week. It's going to be a little bit different one than we're used to. I'll get to that when we get there, but that's going to actually lead into a potential asshole of the week, which I've got 3 potential assholes of the week, all involved in one incident. So I'll see what you think about it. We'll come up with a consensus, but then we'll wrap up the show with our obligatory fantasy minute as you and I.
Everyone's new favorite segment.
Simply yours and mine, because we are battling for our fantasy league title. For the first time, you and I are going like head to head, basically for down the stretch. First time in 20 years since the inaugural season.
Yeah, that's what I'm loving about it. It's another saving baseball moment for me.
we're tied at the moment again as we approach 1 month to go in the season. So we're gonna have to talk about how tiebreakers work, because I think we're gonna run into the same issue we ran into 20 years ago when we first started the league. We haven't learned a fucking thing apparently, so we'll break that down for our own amusement, if not anyone else's. So I say we go ahead and jump into the news. Breaking news: Javier Báez, Detroit Tigers shortstop, much maligned Detroit Tigers shortstop, was announced about an hour before we jumped on here to be going on the injured list, out for the season with right hip surgery. And I guess there is hope out there that the right hip was his problem all along, causing his horrific 3 seasons in Detroit of basically being the worst hitter in baseball. Maybe it's been his hip all along. Somehow I doubt it. It's interesting timing. He did go on the IL late last week, actually, and then the announcement just came out tonight that he's having season-ending surgery. So that coincided with the call-up of Trey Sweeney, who you might remember was the key part of the Jack Flaherty deal from the Dodgers at this past trading deadline. So the Tigers are making some interesting moves with their roster. They're basically, you could say, the future is now. They have called up all the prospects you've heard about coming up through the Tigers system. They've got all the kids playing right now, and it's really fucking fun for now a 1 game below 500, hopefully a 500 team after tonight's game with the White Sox, to see how the future could play out. It's got to be the youngest roster in Major League Baseball right now. I guess I can go through the around the whole diamond. I mean, you start with Dylan Dingler, the catching prospect that called up a couple weeks ago. Not to be confused with Dirk Diggler. So we've got him behind the plate. At first base, Spencer Torkelson is back up and raking. He had a 4-hit game last weekend. He's looking like his former self and nothing like he did at the beginning of this season, which is extremely encouraging. Reigning AL Rookie of the Month, Colt Keith, is still raking. He looks legit. We talked about it a little bit last episode how he's legitimizing that contract extension that he received from the Tigers and Scott Harris before he ever set foot on a major league field. He looks like a legit hitter and continues to do so. He might be even a 2-time Rookie of the Month winner after this month concludes. We'll see. But the aforementioned Trey Sweeney came up, and Jace Young called up at the same time. That is the third base prospect that we've been hearing about for quite some time. It's really the reason why the Tigers did not go after big name third base free agents in this offseason, including your Giants, Matt Chapman, who's actually having a tremendous year. So
He
I was
sure
again,
is.
yeah, I was definitely wrong about that one. I particularly looked at the last 100 games of Matt Chapman's 2023 season, where he was in horrific decline. And I thought that was just sort of a harbinger of how his career was kind of falling off a cliff, but that is clearly not the case. It would have been a pretty solid move for the Tigers if they had signed him. It's turned out to be a pretty solid move for your Giants. Although the Giants and Tigers have the exact same record. Or no, Tigers are a half game behind right now. So it's interesting how we've taken different paths to get the exact same place. Riley Green has come off the injured list and is back in the outfield. Kerry Carpenter has done the same and is raking. And of course, Parker Meadows is manning center field. And he looked completely overmatched when he first came up in the beginning of the season. Came back and got injured immediately. And then now he's back and he looks like a potential MVP candidate if he could put together more than 3 weeks. If he can stay healthy, he's a game changer in defense and looking offensively as well. So those are like all the exciting players I wanted to see at the beginning of the season before we even got started. I was hoping to see those guys. The whole strategy behind not going after a lot of free agents is because Scott Harris did not want to block these prospects. I wanted to get a feel for what he had. Of course, many of these are inherited from the previous regime, Al Avila. So, these are, I think that was part of it where Scott Harris literally just wanted to see how these players could progress throughout the minor leagues and into the majors, just to know what he's got and what he needs to do going forward. This is basically going to be a 6-week tryout for everybody to see what the 2025 roster will look like. And what areas will need to be supplemented with free agents. Right now, I mean, the young kids, they're kids. They're not hitting 300 or anything like that, except for Colt Keith. But they're not. They don't. No one looks overmatched, which is really really encouraging. As we've seen it plenty of times where somebody gets called up and they just don't look like they belong. And I haven't seen that with anybody. Trey Sweeney, clearly the heir apparent to Javi Báez. He's solid defensively. He's only hitting 211, 220, something like that. But that's not too discouraging. I'm not worried about that at this moment. As his defense looks solid enough, if he can provide anything offensively, it's more than what Javi Báez has been providing for the better part of 3 years. So I was going to talk about this before the breaking news came out about Javi Báez's injury, but I mean, with the call up of Trey Sweeney and the unceremonious IL stint for Javi Báez, did we potentially see the last of Javi Báez in a Tigers uniform?
I mean, 221? Javi's batting 184. I mean, that's a significant fucking improvement. That's 40
It's points. A big improvement. Yeah. The part of the interesting things we were talking about coming into this is how the schedule makers helped us out by having my Tigers play my Cubs last week, and of course, it was the return of Javi Baez to Wrigley Field for the first time since he has been outside of a Cubs uniform.
Oh no, second time. He came back as a Met.
Did
But
he?
the first
Okay,
time as a Tiger.
okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So yeah, it's been 3 years. So
Yeah, it's been a while.
but he was greeted with a standing ovation. The Cubs did a really classy video tribute to him. Of course, I mean it just emphasizes how you know the dichotomy of Javi Baez, the how he's beloved and was a just a transcendent player in Chicago and has been the complete opposite in Detroit. And it's just so frustrating as he of course got started out with a standing ovation and ended the game with a golden sombrero.
That's
Oh for
right. I
f-
saw
oh for
that.
f- oh for 4 with 4 strikeouts. I mean that just it says it all. That's just what it is as a Tigers player. And this news, subs uh, I think it was the next game Trey Sweeney played, and I'm not sure if Javi Baez came back even for game 3 of that series or if he went on the IL. I gotta miss looking that up, but it's quite possible that was the last we're gonna see of him, and it's kind of curious timing in that the Tigers were ready to call up Sweeney and ready to demote Javi Baez. You were going to talk about what his role would be going forward if he was not on the IL or having season-ending surgery. And I was considering, maybe he is the backup shortstop and a defensive shortstop replacement or something. It's kind of a bitter pill to swallow for someone making $25 million a year. Uh, but that's if that's the best way he could have contributed to the roster, that's what they kind of have to do. Well, that's been removed. He's out for the season now. And I'm wondering if he saw the writing on the wall and just decided, I need to have the surgery. I was going to do it in the off season, but I might as well just do it now, see what happens. I don't know. It's just curious, but so now it's led to speculation that the Tigers might actually buy him out of the final 3 years of his deal. He still has $73 million left to be paid, and I don't know that the Tigers are well served by just eating that money and telling them to go. I kind of like the idea. Maybe and maybe things are radically different after he has the surgery. I don't know how dangerous or what the recovery rate is or what the recovery possibilities are. Typically, surgeries guys come back from, but you never know. Um, I don't know. It just kind of feels like this might be the end for Javi Baez, potentially for his career or at least his Tigers career. But just too ironic that it might end in Wrigley Field with a golden sombrero and a Tigers uniform.
I mean, you can't take away what he did while he was on the Cubs, and he was still a defensive highlight film at times for the Tigers, but it was
Not
inconsistent
the
as
same
he.
way it was. Yeah, the
Yeah,
consistency wasn't quite there. So
yeah. So I mean, you got to wonder Tigers being used to situations somewhat like this with Miguel Cabrera, although Miguel Cabrera was a guaranteed Hall of Famer. Um, you wonder if they'll handle it in that way, where he is able to have success through minimal play versus, I mean, you're going to have to pay him one way or the other, right? Maybe it's better to have him there in some capacity in case someone goes down or something, you need him to fill in, and you got a immediate veteran presence there.
that's
But
why I think it just
he's
doesn't
in
make
a
sense just
part-time
to
role.
release him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're such a young team. It would seem he can teach these guys and teach these guys his fucking swipe tag. Is there any
Yeah.
better? There's no better. It's still no better.
No.
I mean, there's some good ones out there, but like his ability to, no matter what height the ball was thrown at, and successfully gets it down was like it wasn't even human at times.
Well, it's literally because he's ambidextrous. He's using, like, his dominant hand to catch the ball. And that's not how I mean, just imagine how different you'd anyone would be in the field if they could use their dominant hand to catch and throw. That's just how
Right.
he is. So it's crazy, but yeah, I the highlights, I keep saying it. I feel like people in Detroit just don't understand what El Mago was, and they kind of roll their eyes at that idea because he's been so horrific in Detroit, and it's just sad to me. And it's clear he needed the spotlight, he needed the packed stadiums, he needed the drama, he needed Wrigley. It was a perfect marriage, just the Cubs, Wrigley Field, and Javi Baez, and it just does not work outside of that. Mm, Maybe, I don't know if they can work out a settlement, like if they could buy him out for a lesser price or what. That's the only reason I can think of the Tigers agreeing to that. There's no indication that he's a cancer in the clubhouse. He's not a malcontent. He doesn't
Right.
create issues off the field. Um, I don't know why you wouldn't pay, if you're paying $73 million either way, why you wouldn't try to get something out of it. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe he will just announce his retirement. You never know. He doesn't seem to play with the same joy. He doesn't seem to love baseball the way he did on the north side. So I guess I wouldn't be too surprised if we did see him go.
I mean, I, it's, it is pretty crazy how quickly he like fell off the table, though. It wasn't like it was a slow progression.
No, the moment he got in Detroit, it's just been a cliff. I mean, and it has not improved. I've been waiting for it to improve the whole time. We're 3 years into the experiment, and it's not changed a bit. Another interesting thing, as we talk about the Tigers and Cubs, my two favorite teams, is both have the exact same record. They had the same record going into the series at Wrigley last week. Cubs did win the series 2 games to 1. So, but now we're back to both teams being one game below 500. But the routes they got to those records are hilariously different because, of course, the Cubs are bumping up against the de facto salary cap, the collective or the competitive balance tax, 228 million right now. I think after the trade deadline. Uh, the Tigers, meanwhile, have the exact same record and have a $97 million payroll at the moment. Uh,
Moneyball.
s- yeah, so there's lots of ways to get to be a team just below 500, apparently. So it's just amusing. You could say the Cubs have misspent their money, I guess, or you could say the Tigers are spending their money wisely. I don't really know. They're not spending much money at all, so I don't know. I just thought that was ironic and something to bring up. The Cubs also released big news last week. They released Hector Neris, their default closer, that they were resorting to after many injuries to the bullpen, which still happens to be one of the best bullpens in Major League Baseball since June 1st. Uh, Neris was a fucking disaster waiting to happen, essentially. Call him Heart Attack Hector. Hector Nervous was another nickname I heard. Um, he had a whip over 1.5, which is just a disaster for especially a closer to have. There'd be more than one one runner on base every time he took the mound, and that is not what you want to see from your closer. So fortunately, he's been supplanted by Jorge Lopez, which I don't know if you remember this. We talked about it at the time. This was prior to our hiatus late last spring, but Jorge Lopez was DFA'd by the Mets back in May after an incident where he threw his glove into the crowd. Was interviewed after the game saying, misquoted, mind you, saying he was on the worst team in the majors, and he didn't want to be there anymore or whatever he said. But of course, it was later revealed he said he was the worst teammate in Major League Baseball because he was having some personal issues. He was not attacking the Mets at all. I also saw it reported at the time that he chucked his mitt into the crowd, kind of like implying that it was a violent thing where people were in danger. He threw it; it was ridiculous, but he threw his mitt, but he tossed it up over the netting. It wasn't like a he didn't chuck it into the crowd. I thought that was unfair too. So it was just all part of the New York reporting at the time, just kind of piling on, and so much of it was false. But he's come to the Cubs and has been a revelation. He just clearly needed a change of scenery. I believe whatever personal issues he's put behind him. Um, so it's kind of a fun story almost because he's been lights out with the Cubs and after seeing such a weird way to leave the Mets. I also we can't stand the Mets on this podcast, so it's just hilarious that their potential overreaction has been fortunate for the Cubs, as he's probably going to be the closer going forward. So yeah, other than that, I'll get to the Cubs when we get to our badass of the week. But there's a couple of guys I want to talk about there, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So I think that's it for now. I've kind of monopolized the front end of this podcast. If we want to transition over, I don't know if you want to start with your White Sox or your San Francisco Giants.
Well, I think we'll start with the White Sox, but before we get into the White Sox Tigers series, which is going the way I thought it would go, I want to bring the.
Did they get the sweep tonight?
I want to bring. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't actually. I'm going to declare right now, before the game even goes, the White Sox are going to win tonight. I'm declaring
You're
it.
going up against Ty Madden. Ty Madden just got called up from actually Double-A Erie for the Tigers. So
oh shit, the Sox have never seen him before. Never mind.
He's making his major league debut tonight against your White Sox.
Yeah, I don't know. I see good things. I think I see good things happening tonight. We're gonna get our second win over the Tigers this year. Wow. You're gonna move up on the list of shit of loser. You're gonna move up on the loser list. You won't ever get near the Guardians, but you'll have two. You'll have two versus one. But I want to bring the Javi Báez conversation full circle, which I want to bring in an investigation that's occurred here on Churchill Street in Bucktown, and this started by our sometimes we have this outside bit person named Robin who feeds us material that could be useful on the show. And
is she our intern? Is that
no? She's like a producer at times.
Executive producer.
Us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. And that sounds better.
And she said you need to look into this Howard Aiken curse that has been put on the White Sox.
Who is Howard Aiken?
And you guys, people who are not in Chicago, are asking, who the hell is Howard Aiken? Howard Aiken is injury law attorney, so go where you want with that one. And he gets famous Chicago celebrities to do his commercials with them. He's had now retired, the most famous meteorologist in Chicago, Tom Skilling, did a Howard Aiken commercial. There's numerous people, some Bulls players have in that, but the White Sox, he does a lot with the White Sox. And I believe there's a bit of a Howard Aiken curse, and here's why. The first published Howard Aiken commercial occurred 6 years ago, at the start of the White Sox, as the White Sox are supposed to be coming into their rebuild. In that time, since 2018, the White Sox have made 2 playoff appearances, both losing in the first round and barely finishing over 500 any time outside of those 2 seasons.
Well documented.
They are also going to probably, and we'll get to that in a little bit, exceed the 120 loss record of this year. And
they're now at 100 losses. The Tigers gave them their 100th loss yesterday.
Congratulations. I was actually hoping that didn't happen so I could make joke of that today, but they're not going to give them 101. I've already declared it. But anyway, let's look at the Howard Aiken curse. So it started with Ozzie Guillen. Ozzie Guillen has since joining Howard Aiken on his commercials, has interviewed for multiple managerial positions, has yet to get one. Tim Anderson then took over the reins for Ozzie Guillen. He's out of baseball.
I remember the Tim Anderson commercials, like kind of awkward. They're standing in like some municipal ball field someplace, just sort of. I almost thought I actually looked part of those up on YouTube today. They're standing very far apart. I wonder if those were recorded during COVID, or they had to be 6 feet apart. It looked odd how they were doing it. So
it was about 4.5 years ago. So
yeah, but that would
fall right in there. Nicky Lopez is the latest. Now, not that Nicky is lighting up the stat line, but he is currently having his second worst season in his career with the White Sox. And by the end of the season, who knows? It could be his worst season ever. But interestingly enough, you brought up Javi Báez earlier, and 5 years ago, Javi Báez did a commercial with Howard Aiken.
I don't
which
remember
he was
that.
in the midst of his one of his best seasons. He had a 847 OPS, a 115 OPS plus. Since then, well, we know what's happened since then. He has
Yes.
had a total decline. He is currently injured, as you pointed out, partly part of the Howard Aiken curse. And the Cubs, since that commercial, have made one playoff appearance.
Wow.
My point being, Chicago sports, Chicago athletes, stop doing Howard Aiken commercials. He is putting a curse on your teams.
Robin uncovered something serious. That's damning evidence right there. How much has happened after what's his name? Harold Aiken?
Howard Aiken.
Howard.
Aiken
Yeah.
Law. Ankin. Don't use them. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. Sorry, Howard. I apologize. You're probably really good at
Just tell him to stop doing commercials with Chicago
just
athletes.
just leave the White Sox alone and the Cubs alone and the Bulls alone and the Hawks and the Hawks also have participated in this. They haven't won since they've participated. So.
Yeah, they've had some issues on their end too.
So
interesting. Well, thank you, Robin, for that intrepid reporting and the
yes,
interesting theories.
But you pointed out, Smitty, to get to the Sox Tiger series that's currently happening, and they will have that wraparound tonight. The Sox are the second fastest team to 100 losses. The fastest is the 1916 Athletics. There we go. Another fine team that we cover on this broadcast. They were
The
the
Philadelphia
fastest
A's.
by one day, by one game, actually, whatever it was, by one game. Yeah, they did it by one game. So the Sox are not the worst there. However, I think the Sox are going to end up with a lot of horrendous records. Let me tell you why they are going to lose over 120 games. In order
They need to go 12-19 at this point with 31 games left to avoid the most losses in Major League history.
Yes, thank you. I have that right here. Thank you. That would be a 387 winning percentage. Which
that's a lot.
Why doesn't that look good, Smitty? Because they currently have a 237 winning percentage. They have 10 series left. They'd have to win one game of each of those series, and the one thing that could happen is they do have to play Cleveland, so perhaps they could sweep Cleveland.
They own Cleveland. Yeah, no problem.
To avoid the 120 losses. But I honestly think I envision the Sox going more like probably like what is that going to equate to? Like 8-23. So they're going to end up at about 122, 123 losses, hold the record because they don't have the players. Like they are playing differently. Like they're I'm not
Grady
saying it's
Sizemore bump.
I'm not saying it's Grady Sizemore. I think it's just a change of regime. I don't think anyone like Raffol.
I think you can see a difference on the field. You can see the energy. There's more energy. There's, there's not the talent that needs to be there, but there's less chaos. I think with Pedro Raffol being gone. So there's, I think, like you're saying, it's not necessarily Grady Sizemore, but it's just a change in general. It's kind of lit a fire. Not that it's led to results, but it's at least a more credible product on the field. What I've noticed, at least from afar, and certainly during this Tiger series, is if you get a lead and have to use your bullpen, it just implodes every time.
Yeah.
And it seems like even if you're playing well, it's just never going to be enough because your bullpen is just full of guys that shouldn't be in the major leagues.
Yeah, our defense can't do anything when the ball's being hit over the wall. I mean,
yeah,
especially like 4 rows up. If it's like maybe right over the wall, we might be able to grab it. But 4 rows up, you're not going to get anything out of there. The other record that looks to still be in play is the worst run differential in the history of baseball.
Oh,
they are
at Mr. Run differential again.
Yeah, they're at negative 276 with 31 games remaining. That means they only have to average a loss of 2.25 runs per game the rest of the way. And
that could happen.
They are playing the Red Sox, the Padres, It is not good. This is not an easy end of the season. Even if they were in the running, it would have been tough sledding in the month of September. They got the Guardians again, which of course they've beat 5 times, but it's September. Maybe the Guardians are going to be playing at a different level. Who else? They have a series of teams competing for playoff spots. So of those 10 game series. So it just doesn't look good.
Well, and even the Tigers, who have been typically offensively challenged throughout the year, have been putting up lots of runs against your White Sox over the last couple of days. So 13 runs on Saturday,
Yeah.
9 runs yesterday. So yeah, it's not looking good. I did see you were officially eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah, it was
I
the
guess
fastest second or close to fastest ever, or something like that
yeah,
too. Yeah,
on
it said like
August 17th. Yeah, so
yeah,
that was when I saw that come through, I was I guess not surprised, but I was just like, well, I thought you were eliminated long ago, but no, it's official now mathematically. You cannot make
yeah.
the playoffs.
I thought it was official by May 1st, but
Pretty
I
much.
guess it wasn't official. It was unofficial, but
Math is
we
a weird thing, man.
yeah, we had to play them out, Smitty. We had to play them out. Other things to note. I was excited for my Giants that they were playing the Sox, and the sweep was in their grasp, and somehow the Giants, who just love to just stay at 500, managed to lose the last fucking game of the series. And
Seems to
the
be a theme.
Sox had to try. I mean, you could have fucking laid down and help my other team out or something. Jesus, the team with a
Yeah.
chance.
I mean, clearly you are a White Sox fan first, but
Yeah.
who gives a fuck about this season? It certainly
Yes.
helps your Giants who are in the wild card race. So I could see why you're rooting for the Giants. I'm I'm had we I mean, the Tigers and Cubs, they're neither of them going to make the playoffs. Some people still think the Cubs will. I think that's bullshit. I was just rooting for the Tigers. I'm always Tigers over the Cubs. Uh, Unfortunately, the Cubs took 2 out of 3, but yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I assumed you were rooting for your Giants as you have been wearing your Giants gear the last several episodes, so I wasn't too
Yeah.
surprised about that. But
I'm totally rooting for the Giants, and I mean, I'm with you though. I feel like outside of the Giants or Cubs going on like some 10 game win streak, they're not making the playoffs. They're not making the
yeah,
wild card. There's too much. The Cubs and Giants, I think, are they tied now? Or yeah, they're tied. Or
they're
no, half a game. The Giants have
half
a
a
half game
game,
on the Cubs, just like they have a half a game on the Tigers in overall
but
record.
they're like 6 games back in the loss column behind the Braves, and they still have both would have to pass the Mets.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I mean,
it's
it
just
just yeah.
I think you're right. I think if either went on a 10-game winning streak, then yes, that's possible. The Cubs keep losing one game in a series, which is fine if you did that throughout the year, but they've dug such a huge hole that
Yeah.
you can't even playing 670 baseball doesn't get you to the playoffs at this point. So it's ridiculous, but I think you're right. I think a 10-game winning streak is the only way either of those teams could find their way into the actual playoff race, barring a tremendous historic collapse by the Braves, which I guess there's potential there, and who knows what the Mets are capable of. So there is, with a month to go, I guess there is some mathematical hope out there, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. No, it's like it seemed very plausible when we went to the All-Star break, because outside of God, I forget who the Giants played, but they only played like they only had one team with truly a winning record.
Yeah, you
Uh
went over the record or
yeah.
the ease of schedule for our
Yeah.
teams on the way out, which
And,
is they're kind of taking advantage of, but it's not enough.
no, like they should be probably 5 games over 500 right now with the schedule that they've had so far coming back from the All-Star break. They got to 3 games. They've given it all back.
Ugh.
And it's like it's just whatever they have just isn't enough. And maybe one of these teams, the because I feel like the Giants and Cubs are kind of the same team right now. They have
Yeah.
pretty decent pitching, pretty decent starting pitching on both sides, and the Cubs bullpen, like you pointed out, as you'll get more into that probably in a minute here, is like been the best bullpen in baseball for a few months now. But like, you put all that in, you hear all these positive things, and we talk about all these positive things with both the Giants and the Cubs, yet there's always some shit looming that doesn't happen. It's either their pitching is lights out and they can only score 1 run. It's the same thing for
Yep.
both teams, or they put up 13 runs and they let up 14. Like, it's like there's just no rhyme or reason for any of it. And I guess that's what makes baseball such a unique sport, because of, I think it's always the length of the season, where, in football, you win 10 games in a row, you're headed to the playoffs without a doubt. You win 10 games in a row in baseball, depending on when you do it, that may not mean that much at the end of the day. I mean, the White Sox actually won 5 games in a row once this year. They are still going to finish with the worst record in baseball history.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm still rooting for the Giants. I'm still watching. I'm actually watching the Sox a little more right now, just because they look like they're fucking trying, at least. So
yeah, you don't have to deal with Pedro in the dugout or weird statements, or it's kind of normalized a little bit. So
one last Sox note real quick before I pass the torch over to the north side for you. But it was interesting that and I can't think of his name, so that's why we're not getting paid to do fucking podcasts here. But their new bench coach basically said he never agreed with Pedro Grifal's philosophy of just the flush it scenario after a loss. What they do now is they go back in and talk about what they could have done better to not lose, like how to correct these errors, not just this whole idea of, well, we lost, just flush it, we'll come back tomorrow and win. They're actually not that I don't want Grady Sizemore as my manager. I don't want this coaching anyone who's there right now next year, but they're at least doing what seems to make sense. As a baseball team,
not just be in denial, like, oh no, it's fine. We'll be fine tomorrow.
like ignoring the situation, and they're at least,
that's interesting.
And I mean, shit, I saw Lewis Robert run a fucking ball outing, be safe at first on an infield grounder. Like that hasn't happened in fucking 3 since La Russa into Grifal. So
the glory days of La Russa.
Yeah, God, what would I would have given for La Russa Palooza back? They probably would have gone on a 10-game win streak under Tony, that silver fox, Tony.
I think you just gave me an excuse to put my favorite drop back into this episode, the La Russa Palooza. Anytime you want to bring that up, I will drop that in. Thank you.
It'll be interesting to see when he pops his head up again. It'll probably be during the managerial search. He'll be in the news since he's advisor.
The mysterious advisor behind the scenes, behind the curtains.
So that's pretty much all I got for the Sox and Giants.
Well, I'm going to call an audible here because I am taking my tone from something that happened to you quite a bit in the early stages of this podcast. Shit, Pete forgot.
Oh, that
hasn't happened quite.
You forgot the Jim Joyce thing, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Shit, Smitty forgot. I completely forgot a whole segment I was going to do about my Tigers as ESPN's E60, which is sort of their documentary kind of investigative journalism show once a week. They chose to talk about the Jim Joyce, Armando Galarraga imperfect game once again, which hasn't come up in quite a while. It's kind of curious timing. I was wondering, why are they talking about this 14 years after the event? It happened in June, so it wasn't even the anniversary, as this documentary came out last week. But what it was is they were actually following a Monmouth University law school class whose professor decided to spend the entire semester studying this game and the legal ramifications. The idea of the rule of law versus the spirit of the law, and how justice should be served versus, living by the the actual words of the law. And it was really interesting because they started out, interviewing some of the students that some of which have never watched a baseball game in their life, certainly wouldn't know anything about Armando Galarraga or Jim Joyce. Um, and I guess I'm assuming everyone listening to this podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about. Is in 2010, Armando Galarraga had a perfect game going, 2 outs in the ninth, a ground ball where he was hit to Miguel Cabrera. So Galarraga had to cover first and did so quite easily. And somehow first base umpire Jim Joyce called the runner safe. And it was so obvious to everyone involved that a mistake had been made, yet that was 4 years before we had instant replay. And actually that play and this whole situation is probably the biggest catalyst of why we have instant replay today, because the arrogant umpires in the Umpires Association did not want to have instant replay kind of hanging over their head to second guess all their decisions on the field. But they finally realized that it could save them from such a horrific situation as what Jim Joyce experienced. Uh, the coolest thing about this story, and we did a whole segment about this probably on the 10-year anniversary 4 years ago. Jim Joyce was incredibly remorseful, as opposed to most umpires you see these days, where their ego is far too fragile to ever admit fault. Jim Joyce knew he had screwed up as soon as he saw the replay. He did not know at the time. He thought he got it right, and I don't know. And he even said in this E60 special that he doesn't understand why he saw it that way at the moment. He called him safe, and it was just not even close. Uh, he talked about the immediate aftermath. He contacted Bud Selig, begging him to overturn his own call, to whatever he had to do to get it right in the record books for Armando Galarraga. The One of the most disturbing things about this is, of course, you don't hear about this directly, but I guess you could assume it's happening. But Jim Joyce said he and his family received over 1,500 death threats.
Yeah, that's effed up.
Following that, which is sad. I guess it's not surprising, but just the volume of it was disturbing, and all of it's disturbing. But Major League Baseball did hire security for his family for a period of weeks. I think the best part about all of this is, and what kind of de-escalated the situation, is Armando Galarraga's actions afterwards. It was actually Jim Leland, manager of the Tigers at the time, his idea to have Galarraga bring out the lineup card to Jim Joyce on the next day, kind of symbolically, burying the hatchet. And it's such a cool moment because, again, you don't see much contrition from umpires. They're usually just, most of the time on this podcast, when we talk about umpires, talk about how they're just arrogant fucks that fuck up and don't admit it and won't ever fess up to it. Where this is the complete opposite case. Jim Joyce was in tears at the moment. He was just trying to hold it together, seeing the forgiveness, and it was kind of a cool moment for baseball in general. But even though it's such a weird thing, the angle that the law school class at Monmouth took to it was they actually wrote an 82-page report and sent it to Rob Manfred, now commissioner of Major League Baseball. And I guess he finally responded to that and was interviewed by E60 cameras. So that's why this is happening now. The class actually happened in 2022, but Manfred finally was responding publicly to it. And he kind of used the exact same cowardly excuse that Bud Selig used at the time, in that they couldn't go back and change anything. Because it would open Pandora's box, and it's the same exact terms. You don't want to go back and have to change, controversial calls throughout history, or going forward. It would lead to just more questions, and any result of a game might not be what you think it is. It might just get overturned in the future. The problem with that is, and why it literally does not apply in this particular case, is, especially when you look at going back through the past, there is no situation in baseball history where all parties agree that the mistake was made, and none would actually be hurt or it wouldn't be a great benefit necessarily other than to Armando Galarraga getting in the record books as the 25th perfect game in history. Um, no one's disputing the facts. Jim Joyce wants it to be overturned. The Tigers certainly want it to be overturned. The Twins, I think it was the Twins they were playing. I always forget if it was the Twins or the Indians, but uh, they they don't think it should have been. He should have been called safe. Even the runner, they interviewed the batter at the time. He was sure he knew he was out. First base coach knew he was out. There's no disputing it, and there's just no other situation like that where it could just easily just say, you know what, they fucked up. We're going to give them the perfect game. Also, you worry about they tried to talk about Pandora's box in the future. Well, we have instant replay now to take care of that. So
Well,
you don't have to, well, kind of, but it's just different. So it just felt like a cowardly thing that, of course, the cowardly owner's lawyer Rob Manfred resorted to, the same excuse that Bud Selig did. Just frustrating. But the main point, though, I wanted to make is I kind of think it's better if they don't change it. Mainly because it's certainly better for Armando Galarraga, because would we even be talking about him today if it was a perfect game? I
nope.
mean, we certainly wouldn't be talking about Jim Joyce. We wouldn't be talking about the story of redemption and forgiveness. You know, other perfect games, more recent ilk. There's only been 24 in history. One was Phil Umber from your Chicago White Sox in 2012. Has anyone brought up Phil Umber more than you and I? I think I don't think anyone talks about Phil Umber at all, and I think somehow we keep bringing him up somehow in this podcast. But
Yeah, I think we bring it up when it's like the anniversary if we're
yeah,
podcasting that
exactly,
day. But like
exactly. So,
you bring up the perfect point, and it's like some of the pitchers with perfect games are, if you look at their careers, are maybe some of the least deserving to have had a perfect game.
well,
Um,
Galarraga himself was out of the league within 2 years. He had
yeah,
like an ERA in the fives the next
yeah,
year, and in the
587, I
sixes, and
think
then
it
he was
was.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think that he should have been robbed of it, but but there's other pitchers who probably have had defensive issues behind them who certainly have deserved to have perfect games on
Yeah.
their resume and didn't get it in some particular nights. And um that aside, like I think he I agree. Like this is a landslide, right? And it had the rarity of the umpire admitting they made a mistake. The one umpire, not like we huddled up and made a group decision. Jim Joyce is like, I blew the call. I'm heartbroken.
That's
He
still
didn't
my favorite
deserve
part of
it.
this story. Is his quote was, "I kicked the shit out of that call."
Yeah.
Like his terminology, I guess umpires speak in a different way. I wouldn't think of kicking saying I kicked the shit out of that call by meaning I fucked it up. But I always like that turn of phrase.
Yeah. So I mean, at the same time, I agree. I agree. I don't think we'd be talking about it right now if it was
Nope.
other than on the off chance we remembered the anniversary of it. And
Oh, I'll bring it up next year. It'll be the 15-year anniversary, I'm sure.
but yeah, but the Pantora's boxing, it's so funny because immediately when you said that, I'm like, oh, would they go back and review the 2005 World Series? The like miss the did Jermaine Dye really get hit by the pitch and
well, and that's what they're
the
referring to
drop
is
third
shit like that.
strike and all that,
Yeah.
like all that shit. Like,
But it's not. That's such not the case, and this is such a different case in every way than all of those. But that is exactly the lazy logic that Selig and Manfred were using to not explore it. But again, I think it's the perfect ending to an imperfect game. Just to have this out there and to get that story of redemption and forgiveness. It's better this way, actually. So yeah, I mean, I don't know when this story is going to come up again. It keeps coming up somehow, but I will talk about it when it does, I guess. But Fortunately, it looks like Armando Galarraga is doing quite well as they interviewed him in his luxurious home, and he's doing quite well. So is Jim Joyce. As the death threats have subsided, fortunately, with no incident. So, congratulations to everybody, except for, of course, Rob Manfred. Well, unless there's anything else I forgot, I think we should move over to a segment we haven't done in quite a while. Our badass of the week.
All right, I'm ready for this. Folks, for the first time ever, I'm completely in the dark on this one.
You're in the dark because I'm going to let you decide, and I think you'll enjoy this.
I am judge and jury tonight.
We typically share a list of players who've had a fantastic week for different reasons. Of the 5 teams we cover, 4 teams essentially that we cover. I'm changing all the rules this week, and you'll understand why. But originally, I was looking into a guy I've been kind of ragging on all season is Pete Crow Armstrong, but he had such a tremendous weekend with a inside the park home run in Miami, the second fastest trip around the bases in StatCast history, 14.08 seconds to get the inside the park home run, which he needed to be that fast because he was almost thrown out at home. He slid under the tag, so it was a spectacle to be seen. He also followed that up the next night with a 437-foot bomb, which he has not been hitting many home runs lately, but he has been hitting the ball to the opposite field, getting on base, which is something I was begging him to do earlier in the season. He's starting to figure it out, and then just letting the home runs come when they come, not trying to force it. So he's starting to let that happen. But to have those back-to-back games, the inside the park and a monstrous home run after, we're interested. So I was going to nominate him, but then you had Seiya Suzuki on Saturday, had 2 home runs and a triple in Miami, which was quite the game of total bases in one day. But it all gets dwarfed, and I didn't bother going into any Tigers, which I could probably always put Turk Skubal on that list of a badass of the week, but it all got dwarfed nationally. And this is where I'm kind of breaking the rules. We've got to talk about Aaron Judge hitting his 50th and 51st home runs this weekend. He is on pace for 63. He's only the 5th, or is he the 6th? I think he's the 6th player in history to have 3 different 50 home run seasons, which is kind of remarkable to think about. And of that list, Babe Ruth, of course, but the rest of the list is steroids guys. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, A-Rod, and I'm forgetting the last one. But Barry is not on that list. He had 73, but he didn't have 50 in any other season. He had 40 in many seasons, but he did not have 3 different 50-plus home run seasons, which is kind of amazing. Neither did Ken Griffey, which I thought I remembered really? 5 different 50. Yeah, he only had two different 50 home run seasons. So what Aaron Judge is doing is just amazing. So I wanted to throw that out there, but I couldn't even stop there with different national outside of our own four team purview. But I think we definitely need to give it to Shohei Ohtani for one night's performance. Well, it's the whole season, but for him on, was it Saturday night? He got his 40th steal of the season, got his 40th home run the same night. So he joined the 40-40 club. I gotta look this up again. Just a second. He is the 6th member of the 40-40 club. But to have it come as a game-winning walk-off grand slam to enter the 40-40 club is just one of the most badass things I can imagine. So I don't know where you want to go. I'm nominating Shohei for our badass of the week. Just that confluence of everything. Do you want to give it to Judge? Do you have a White Sox player you wanted to give it to?
Yeah, a ton. Yeah, hold on. Let me get my White Sox list out for badass of the week.
I just want to leave this in your hands. I know I've pulled a fastball on you here, so I want to leave everything in your court. But
here's the deal. Not only did Ohtani join the 40-40 club in grandiose fashion, I believe he also did it the fastest ever.
Yes. Yeah, 129 games.
Which actually puts him in line, which all the headlines now are, can he get to 50-50? But he's probably at least going to be 45-45, which alone is just fucking insane. Yeah. I have to go Ohtani because of the I'm a roundness guy, right? Like I like when you're
Around.
not just because of my belly, my
All
beer
right.
breaded steak sandwich belly here, burrito belly, but because of because of like I like players who are not one dimensional. Um,
Mm.
and
Oh, yeah, he just pitched
again,
off a mound for the first time this weekend too,
yeah,
so
that's the other thing. We're who knows what the fuck's going to happen next year with this guy, but we are in the midst of um, some pretty amazing shit happening. Whether or not any illegal substances are involved at this point, until I hear
uh,
it, I'm going
yeah.
to pretend it's not happening. Um,
Yeah, I
there,
hate
I
to
mean,
think about it. I've heard
the
nothing to that extent, but
yes,
that doesn't
right,
mean yeah.
yeah,
We said the
but
same thing in the late '90s too, so
yeah, but the what Judge and Ohtani are both doing are great for baseball, but what Ohtani's doing is just it's just unbelievable what he's been doing year in and year out. He is, I mean, I've said it before. I know it's blasphemy. He's better than Babe Ruth. He's better than Babe Ruth because
yeah.
again, if he gets on a mound next year and continues to do this while pitching, that is something Babe Ruth did not do. Babe Ruth's home runs did not cross over while he was pitching. He was a pitcher and an okay hitter. And then he stopped pitching and became an incredible hitter in baseball and broke all those records. But he did not do them in tandem. And Otani's already done that in tandem.
Well,
So
I what he's doing is remarkable, but I'm putting him past at least this week, past Aaron Judge, just because of the badass timing to do a walk off to get to the 40-40 club and a grand slam walk off. That's badass. That's as badass as it gets. So I think he deserves our badass of the week nomination. So
yeah.
congratulations, Shohei Ohtani. I'm sure he wanted that. So
So just real quick, I had
yeah.
to when you said like what Barry Bonds never had 50 home run seasons. He didn't. He like you said, his only over 50 home run season was 73, and in 2000 he had 49. But
Mm-hmm.
here's why. Just real quick. In 2004, he was walked
Yeah.
232 times.
Yeah.
In '02, he was walked 198 times. He out of all of his like home run bashing seasons, he 5 years in a row from 2000 to 2004, he led the league in walks, had
Well,
an
he
injured
famously he'd get intentionally walked with the bases loaded. They'd rather have
Buck
him,
Showalter,
yeah, they'd
and
rather
they
have
won
him
the
walk in
game.
or run.
They won the game because they didn't let him hit. So
Shrewd maneuver.
I guess he never really did. He really ever have a chance? He got walked 232 times one season. That's never going to be touched. That is never going to be
Jesus.
touched. That's insane. But hey, it's not in the Hall of Fame. But whatever.
Yeah. That's why we don't talk about the Hall of Fame in this show. So,
Yeah.
one of the myriad reasons we don't talk about the Hall of Fame in this show. So,
All right. Now we got
well,
our next vote. I get to vote again, right?
this is leading right into it. Our badass league Shohei Ohtani, the Grand Slam walk off 40-40 club home run, leads us right into a discussion we're going to have about our asshole of the week. I'm going to have 3 nominations here, and I'm not sure if you're ready for this. And this is very different, and probably none of these guys are assholes, but I just thought it'd be a good way to have this platform to have this conversation with. But if you look at the replay of Shohei's Grand Slam walk off historic 40-40 club home run, it is hit just over the wall at Dodger Stadium into a section that's actually called the home run seats, oddly enough, where there is a middle-aged man who brought his glove to the ballpark with him. He bought seats in the home run section, brought his glove. Clearly, he knew there was history on the line with Shohei Ohtani approaching the 40-40 club. So, I don't know. First of all, what are your thoughts about a grown man bringing a baseball mitt to a baseball game?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to go with he has the early lead on asshole of the week
That is
because
a
he's a
great way to
grown
put it.
man with a glove at the game.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not a good look. Children, carte blanche. You can bring your glove. Certainly do it. A grown man should not bring a mitt to a to a baseball game. It looks silly. It looks childish, essentially. That's one strike against him. The ball in question, this very historic, very lucrative potential ball is going directly towards this man, and looks like it's going to go right into his glove. Unfortunately, he gets a little bit bumped into by another fan, but it bounces off his glove and falls onto the field. So he bought his seats. Everything's coming together the moment he wanted. He brought his glove. It's coming right to him. He fucking clanks it and does not catch the ball. You can see it, the replay is hilarious. If you want to pull it up while we're talking about this, you'll get what I'm talking about.
No, I've seen it. Yeah, I saw it.
Okay. He immediately goes into the famous surrender cobras pose where he puts his hands over his head and with his elbows out. The ball just hilariously just is sitting there right in front of him on the warning track as the rest of the stadium is going nuts as everyone realizes they've won the game. It's a grand fucking slam. Walk-off winner. It's the 40-40 club. Shohei is the champion of the universe. This dude is beside himself because he dropped the fucking ball. It's just hilarious. But it's kind of where I get to my number 2 potential asshole of the week is the Rays fan. A guy, they call him Rays guy now in Los Angeles. Just some random fan next to Mitt guy, or Mitt Man, I think they're calling him. He has a Rays t-shirt on, so he's certainly not rooting for this Grand Slam to come over. But he's the guy that bumps into Mitt Man, going for the ball. And it's hard to tell in the video if I think Mitt Man was going to drop the ball anyway. I think it hit the heel of his glove and is going to come out anyway. He did get bumped at the same time. Guy's going for the ball, but the opposing team's fan bumps into Mitt guy, looks like he's spent a lot of thought. Like this is the culmination of his entire life. He's going to catch this ball, and Ray's guy knocks it out of his glove potentially. So he was going to be another nominee for asshole of the week, but I think the case for him is not as strong as for Mitt Man. Third nominee is Tampa Bay Rays outfielder Jose Siri, who somehow had no idea the consequence of the ball of that moment. Saw the ball sitting there on the warning track and just threw it into the crowd, like probably about 10 rows over Mitt Man and Ray's guy, right over their heads, basically. Just kind of, I don't think he meant to do it, but it looks like he was just totally mocking them. What did he say? He said, he was interviewed after the game, like, why'd you throw the ball into the crowd? It's like, we just got walked off. I just threw it to the fans. So you kind of understand, like, he was pissed off and just threw the ball away. But for him not to understand, he said he had no idea that it was such a historic moment, the 40-40 club for Shohei. So typically that ball would be authenticated by MLB, potentially given directly to Shohei Ohtani or sent directly to the Hall of Fame. Jose Siri just tossed it to the fucking crowd. There's a whole story on a Dodgers blog where they actually found the guy that caught the ball thrown by Jose Siri. They said Dodgers security came to them right away and said, hold up and we'll authenticate this. And you might remember the Dodgers had an incident earlier this year where a wife and her husband were kind of accosted by Dodgers security for another. I think it was probably Shohei's first home run as a Dodger.
Exactly.
And they were just dicks, the security guards to this woman and her husband, and kind of tried to strong arm them and had taken a shitty deal for the historic baseball. And so they kind of, I think that, they may be, their security might be a little gun shy in how to handle these situations now. Cause originally the security had gotten with this, I forget the guy's name who actually has the ball right now, but said they'd be back with authentication services. And the guy said they never showed up. They never came back. So they just took off. And the unfortunate part for this guy is that the ball is not authenticated and never will be. Like, you can never prove that was the ball. So, he might have a potentially, lucrative heirloom right there, but it's literally worth, any Major League Baseball you could just buy off the shelf because no one's ever going to know if that was really the ball or not. So
I actually have the ball that was hit.
You've got it now. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not
so
surprised.
yeah.
So none of these people are assholes. I just thought it'd be fun to make one of them our asshole of the week. I don't know. I think I know which direction we're gonna go here, but I thought there's different aspects of this ridiculous and yet fun story that we could talk about.
Yeah. So first off, I'm just immediately ruling out Jose Siri. He should not know that it's an historic moment in baseball. He should give
There is
it.
lots of announcements. There was no doubt. Like there is everyone going into that game knew that he was potentially going to make the 40-40 club. So I
I
guess
mean,
I
maybe
guess
if you're
Siri
reading the
not.
press, I don't know. Like, I don't think these guys all like
I mean,
we.
there's
I think we
signage
assume
all
too
over the
much.
stadium. I mean, it
But
was
are
pretty
they really?
obvious, but
I don't know. I'll give a player the benefit of the doubt
okay.
of saying he didn't know because like
You're kind.
I think we sometimes assume too much, and these guys like block a lot of shit out, and
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
just focused on his game. Well, he doesn't give a
yeah,
shit
whatever.
what Otani's doing.
And even if he knew it was and threw it into the crowd, whatever, he was pissed. They just got walked off. Fine,
If he did it
whatever.
on purpose, he if he definitely said he did it on purpose just to fuck with people or fuck with MLB or fuck with Otani, then I think he would definitely rise to the level of asshole. But that's
Yeah,
not what happened. It was just
yeah,
he was oblivious, which is just funny.
yeah. And then for what's the guy who bumped into him? What's his nickname?
Rays guy,
Yeah, Ray's guy. I mean,
he's just he's just going for the
whatever.
ball.
Whatever. He's going for the ball. We've been through this situation in Chicago. It sometimes ruins world championships. But you got to give it. I'm staying in my lane. You're an adult male. You come to you come to the park with a glove. You make the fucking catch. If you're going to that lengths, you already showed up to the park with the glove.
And he
At
bought the home run seats, like, with that in
Yeah,
mind. He knew
with that
you
in
could
mind.
tell he knew what the historic moment was gonna be. I can't imagine what those seats cost
Yeah,
on a normal night, let alone what they'd cost on what the
right.
dynamic pricing the Dodgers, I'm sure, use in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Uh, he spent a pretty penny for that, and he just let it fall right through his hands.
He's essentially like a closer in baseball. You got one job to do and you fucked it up.
He fucked it up.
So
Just
he,
that
by far to me, is the asshole of the week.
I agree. Again, I don't think he's an asshole. I just think in this scenario and in our platform, we could certainly nominate him as our asshole of the week. Well, that was fun. I wanted to bring that. I was hoping you knew a little bit about that story, so that works out well. Unless there's any shit I forgot or any shit you forgot, I think we've covered our bases for this episode 151. You got something?
There is one thing I forgot to talk about during the White Sox segment, and
That's fine.
you probably have seen this. It's about ex White Sox uh, bullpen hand Michael Kopech, who for the Dodgers has pitched in 11 games, has allowed 1 run, has 2 wins, 2 saves, a .44 WHIP, and a
Oh my god,
.79 ERA. I
a
don't have
change of
the
scenery.
I don't have the. Let me get to you the strikeouts too. It didn't come up in this quick stat. Let me see if I can find the strikeouts here. That's also uh, fucking insane too. So I don't have those right here, but I just wanted
That's
to
all right.
point out that like you want to talk about the a change of scenery, and it leads to the question: Has did Ethan Katz overstay his welcome? I mean,
That's an interesting
like,
question for the off season.
yeah, I mean, to see such a turnaround like that is just insane. I just
Well,
wanted to
I think
bring that up.
Eloy's doing pretty well in Baltimore too. I think so. Maybe that's a segment next week where we look at what everyone's done after they've left the White Sox at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
See how greener pastures and that change of scenery might make all the difference.
yeah, it might. I mean, who the fuck knows? But whatever. But I think that's it. We got the fantasy minute though, right?
Yeah, and no one else gives a shit, but you and I certainly do. So we're gonna end the show with our another fantasy minute.
I got it right here.
You and I have been battling throughout the summer, swapping first place back and forth. We are at the moment tied once again at 59 and a half points. We have 30 days left, 31 games since 31 days, whatever. The season's wrapping up rapidly, and neither of us have been able to separate ourselves. It's going to come down to the wire. And you and I started our fantasy league 20 years ago. It was actually the genesis of Major League A-holes. That was the name of our original fantasy league in 2004. And you and I ended up going to the wire and tying at the end of that season in our rotisserie league, which you and I had never considered that a possibility, just because we were novices. But you and I are not novices anymore. We've been running either you or I have been running this league for 20 years now, and yet I feel like we might be suffering the same fate as we did the inaugural season. As there's a potential that we could be tied once again. What we learned and wrote in the rules after that first season was the tiebreaker would be in a rotisserie league. Which of the two tied managers had was ahead of the other in more categories, and that if we went retroactively back, and which we don't want to open Pandora's box, you would actually be the champion that first year because I believe you were ahead in six. You were ahead of me in 6 categories, and I was ahead of you in 4 categories. Um, so if you wanna take away my partial championship that year and give it all to yourself, you can, but be careful. Be careful with that Pandora's box. So we have that set up now. The problem is right now you lead in 5 of our 10 categories. I lead you in 4 of those, and you and I are tied in the other. And I think you and I are tied for home runs right now. We're at the top, and basically you and I are first and second in every category. So I'd be shocked if we're tied with home runs. So if I pulled ahead, I would have 5 categories ahead of you, and you would have 5 categories ahead of me. So we would at that point need a second tiebreaker, which I didn't think would be, I mean, it never dawned on me. It's never been an issue for 20 years. So what do we do? Like if that happens, what would the second tiebreaker? I like the first tiebreaker. If I'm ahead of you in more categories, or you're ahead of me in more categories, even though we had the same point total, I think that's fair. I mean, it's hard to come up with a better way. So that's why I don't mind the category rankings to be the first tiebreaker. But what would be a justifiable second tiebreaker if it comes down to it? Do you
God.
have anything? I think the only thing I can think of is like I saw in one category, I only have 3 points. I forget what it even is, but maybe whoever has the lowest point total in one single category is second place. Just because you know the other player didn't finish as poorly in that one in any category except for that. So that'd be pretty brutal to lose that way. But I think that might be one way to do it. Um, I just I don't know how else we would solve this. So maybe that's something you and I need to think about. And I think since I run the league and you're kind of the de facto co-commissioner or
Yeah.
deputy commissioner, I think you and I can resolve this. I think we need to do it soon so that we're not we're not at each other's throats for the prize money at the end of the season, and we can just agree to it and be good with it. So I don't know if anyone's actually listened this long. This is much longer than a fantasy minute. But if you guys have ideas or have seen how a second tiebreaker works in rotisserie leagues, I'd love to hear it.
We have to do an on-air coin flip.
Could be that is awesome. Yeah, we should tie the podcast into it.
Yeah, I think it's an on-air coin flip because at that
Turn
point,
this into content. I like
at,
that. That would be
at
the ultimate fantasy minute then.
at that point, it's like I don't disagree with the idea of like, okay, so whoever has the lowest of low categories, but at
Yeah.
the same time,
It kind of it
to
stuck
me,
out to me, but it felt kind of gross when I saw it too. When I thought about it, it's like I kind of like the coin toss. I also like the idea of turning it into podcast content. It would
yeah.
be the most consequential segment we've ever done.
Or do we just like see who can chug a beer the fastest on air? And
Eh,
that probably won't. That probably we have to do it at the end of the podcast.
I enjoy beer too much to chug it anymore, so that'd be a waste in my mind.
Who
I
can do
like the
the
coin
most
toss.
Malort shots in one
Oh,
broadcast?
oh my god! Well,
I would dominate. I will
I will
dominate.
be in Chicago visiting you and others in about 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
yeah, we could maybe figure that out. Maybe we do a contest before it comes to it, so we already
Yes.
know
Yeah, we already know who and then someone makes up 20 points in the league and neither of us win.
Yeah, that'd be the best. Much ado about nothing.
Yes.
Well,
All right.
I'm sure no one else is looking forward to that, but I am, and I'm sure you are. So, well, with that, we can wrap up this episode 151 of Major League A-Holes. You can find this podcast anywhere you like to find a podcast. You can find us on social media at Major League A-Holes. Check out our YouTube page at Major League A-Holes. It is where you can get all this video content broken down into segments. And I think with that, we can declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Peace.
Word Hole Media.